Mr. Chairman, sir, and my learned friends, my task has been made very simple, and if I dare say simpler, by the presentation of my learned friend, Major General Narendra Kumar, just before me. And I would only seek to build forwards from it. There is a lot of tradition, there is a lot of wisdom in what he has said. And those are the points which do form the mainstay of the challenge that the terrorism law of India faces. That is something very important which we must bear in mind when we look at the home ground. Today's civilized world is facing a unique kind of challenge. On one hand, we have democratic consciousness and perspectives of civil rights and liberties growing in the world, across the world. On the other hand, we have the need to police and protect civil society from the scourge of terrorism. And thereby, we are required to give wide or yet wider powers to the law enforcement agencies. Many a times, it is said that these agencies, they trample, they do tread on the toes of civil liberty. This is the paradox that the civil society of today faces. Let us be clear. While on one hand, we are right about harping on human rights, on the other hand, we have to understand the need of the growing modern civil society to police itself and to protect itself. There has to be a balance between the two. Some nations have come up with strange ideas, and I would say the word strange is my perspective. Maybe my perception is wrong, maybe my perception may not be shared by all of you. For example, the German nation believes if an airplane has been hijacked, then it is right to even clean out the entire hijacked airplane, meaning to say, to explode it, to bomb it, to finish it with everybody else there on board. That is one end of the perception. On the other end, we have people in the United States of America who even today, despite 9/11, and indeed after 9/11, assert that the process of law, civil liberties, and presumption of innocence must prevail and must be cardinal to any effort to police the larger system. The most beautiful example comes from the United States, wherein in the 9/11 trial, they made sure that the jury shifted from the state of New York. The trial was held at another location. Why? Because they felt that the media and the other people who had been affected adversely were too hurt, too strongly hurt to possibly set up a right set of jurors and to look at it more objectively. At the end of the trial, the judge advised the jurors and the jurors advised themselves that we will not allow our emotional reasons to override what be the facts of evidence. So that is the other end of it. Where do we find a solution to this? How do we go about it? What is the key? To my mind, it is important to understand that the challenge posed to civil liberties by any terrorism law can be balanced if we focus deeper onto what I call as constitutional structures. There are some nations which do not have constitutions. They begin with an absence of an idea. Nations like India, like United States and many others do have constitutions. We look upon our constitution as fundamental structures which are the basic outer parameters of what we can do, what we cannot do. Once we identify constitutional structures, there are ways to balance them against security concerns. If you give police the right to enter any premises, search anybody, probably you want to give the duty to the police that they will necessarily join in public witnesses, public experts, so on and so forth. Having given this very lay, very simple example of how a constitutional structure can be tweaked into a governance strategy, I would quit this portion of my presentation here for paucity of time. What I would say is, we at this hour in the quality of nation's life, we are definitely facing challenges which have to be addressed. But to conclude, I would assert a viewpoint. Why is it that the long and earnest efforts of the United States have not cleaned out terrorism from Afghanistan? This is what I speak to different bodies whenever I get the occasion. Fighting terrorism and the use of law, the crafting of legal structures necessarily have a cultural context. That is the point that I want to highlight. It is common understanding in the developing world that in contemporary times, any measure to combat or foreclose terrorism can be meaningful only if it has a larger or at least a latent or notional acceptability in the affected or prospective beneficiary people's mind. To put it in simpler words, whenever you devise a terrorism law, it is very important to solicit and seek and enlist public participation on the right side of that law. So while crafting a new legislation is the work of legal experts, it is the duty of the political lawmakers, legislators as we call them, to make sure that they reach out to the people at large and make sure that the people understand why and where we are coming from. That would be the key to success of fighting terrorism on a transnational plane. And I thank you for this question.
Now, we call on Him Singh. He's a very public figure, and he's the chairman of the State Legal Committee. But Mr. Him Singh, I request you for 2 minutes because I cannot be able to explain it. All right, I don't know the matter. Can we go 5 minutes more? Then you can have 3-4 minutes.
For that you accommodated me in spite of some problems that my papers could not deliver in time. I do not want to talk more about it. I have no problem for domestic legislation because my subject is international terrorism. My subject is its effect on the international peace. That it amounts to, it is a threat to the world peace. I have in my small paper, I will try to circulate later. I am just saying, today, Mr. Chairman said there is no definition. International terrorism has not been defined. In fact, no municipal constitution, including India, we have not been able to define the meaning and scope of terrorism. But what terrorism means is whatever is done beyond the scope of domestic law, the limits of municipal law, and international, what you call binding, that becomes a terrorism. And terrorism, of course, is not fought with knives. It's not fought only with grenades. I live in Jammu and Kashmir. I have seen enough of it. And Mr. Chairman, I had a privilege to be with Yasser Arafat for 3 years, fighting against one kind of international terrorism. I traveled around the whole world on motorcycle for 6 years. And I went to Latin America, I went to Rwanda, I went to Africa, I went to almost every part of the world where they say that there is terrorism, including Colombia. I would like to say that let's be very fair, intellectuals particularly, and lawyers of course. We have to be fearless in explaining what is the reason of terrorism, who perpetrates countries who's manufacturing those bombs and weapons. We, in Kashmir, we don't grow AK-47 or flying rockets. We only grow apples. In most of the cases in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in India, the weapons used by the terrorists are not made in these countries. So international terrorism flows from the lab of those big powers which are manufacturing the nuclear weapons. Of course, when I went to Hiroshima, I met many Japanese intellectuals and thinkers. They say this is the terrorism. So anything done outside the scope of universal law accepted in the Charter of United Nations is terrorism. I would call a bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a kind of international terrorism. I'd call what happened in Bombay, it was international terrorism. What happened in Rwanda, where a million people were massacred, that was one kind of international terrorism. What happened in Yugoslavia in 1999, when the elected government was thrown out? When a country or group of countries, without taking consent, approval from the United Nations, attacked Yugoslavia. What happened in Iraq? I was there the day they attacked. I was very closely not watching, only I made several films on Iraq. Saddam was a very close friend of mine. But what happened? No United Nations were taken into confidence. All acts done in violation of accepted universal laws and incorporated in the Charter of the United Nations forms a kind of international terrorism. And for that, the big powers or the main culprits, not the smaller ones. What is happening in India is happening in Kashmir or elsewhere. So my proposal, I would like to conclude, Mr. Chairman, sir, let there be a movement like Bertrand Russell. I remember, I read a paper by Bertrand Russell. He said, no world orders, no seminars. He said, I attended 100 seminars in Europe and the world. It did not affect any person. Bertrand Russell once talked to Nehru. He said, let's go and walk from Hiroshima to Washington. Start a movement, mobilize the public opinion, the people opinion against terrorism, against arms. As long as the big power are not stopped from manufacturing of bombs. This is after Nehru, after Bertrand Russell, after Martin Luther King. There's no movement in the world against armament. So I think as long as we are together and there, and the message, Mr. Chairman, is from your side, let's all mobilize international opinion against arms, manufacturing arms, against humanity. And let United Nations play its role of maintaining international peace and security. Thank you.
I agree with him 100%. Ammunition which are used in terrorism. Nobody bothers.
I'm going to give the floor because I have saved some time, not actually, but I have sought the permission of the organizer. I will give 5 minutes.
Sir, you are the final authority. We are only facilitators.
There is another session after that, so I don't want you
You can shut me out. You have this authority.
No. Because I looked very valuable things from the other participants also, because they must have the opportunity to express their views. The thing is not only just to